another edition of the Show Me Hoops podcast. I'm Coach David Heeb, and I'm joined by my brother, Coach Toby Heeb. We're both exhausted from a long weekend of watching basketball and staying up way too late talking about basketball. Toby, what's up?
That's right. Yeah, a whole bunch of basketball this weekend. It's a heck of a weekend.
Yeah, we had a great time in Columbia. We're going to recap the weekend.
Springfield. We were in Springfield. You're in Columbia.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm in Columbia. I'm so tired. I don't know which city I'm in. But we had a great time. Got to see a lot of good friends. Got to talk a lot of basketball with a lot of people. Got to hang out with Lainey and Trey. And Lainey even did a little play-by-play for the podcast.
Did a good job, too.
She did an amazing job. I tried to get Trey to go on and do the Charleston game. He would not. And so, but Trey did really get into the games, and he was really upset with some of the officiating. So, like, kind of
he was not the only one.
Kind of irrationally upset, for Trey,
right.
But that ought to tell you all you need to know. My son Trey might not even watch the game when we go, and he was really...
to put this in perspective for people, in the first day that we were watching, he dropped his phone from about 30 foot from the seat, and it fell down in a walkway.
Yeah.
So that's how much attention he's paying to the game.
He really just, he's just a little boy there watching a game with his dad, and every now and then might look up and not even know what the score is. But he got so upset with the officiating in the last game that he was visibly mad. And so... Anyway, we'll get more into that in a second, but we had a great time. We're going to start out with, a section. We had a section we call JWT or JLT. We're just kind of switching it up a little bit. Just JWT approved. The things that were JWT approved this weekend.
Absolutely.
There were a few. Absolutely there were. Just the overall experience. I want to say that. If going to Springfield from Columbia... Maybe It was because it's new. Maybe it's because they've got the Bass Pro Shop, which we do approve and do sponsor, along with the Bass Fish. I think that going to Springfield was a good move. I think that is a little bit that it's colored a little bit by so many local teams from Springfield being there this weekend.
Right.
So when you had the Stratford girls playing with their 82-game winning streak, there was a huge crowd. When Walnut Grove played for the state championship and they're in the state finals for the third year in a row, there was a huge crowd. I mean, those teams are local. Mountain Grove, huge crowd. They're just down the road. When Charleston played Hogan Prep in the state finals, it was about the same crowd you would have had at Mizzou.
Right.
It was an okay crowd. It was not just an enormous crowd for the Class 3 state finals.
And just like right before it was packed.
Oh, just packed. And everybody left because their team was done playing. And so I think a little bit of the narrative that the Southwest Missouri basketball fan was going to come, just your typical Southwest Missouri basketball fan, come and sit there all day. We did not see that. We saw some teams traveled really well. Van Far come from the northeast side of the state. They traveled
some good student sections, too.
Really well. They had a huge crowd. They're not from the local area. But, as far as just this narrative that just moving it down there was going to make the crowds bigger, I think moving it down there for the Class 1, 2, and 3 especially, there are usually so many Southwest Missouri teams that are there. So I think that did help the crowd. So, but not to rain on it because I don't want to be negative here. It was a good experience. It was a good atmosphere, especially the games in the Hammond Student Center.
Oh, yeah.
I would vote right now to move the whole state tournament to the Hammond Student Center. The atmosphere in there for the Class 3 semifinal games was the best atmosphere I've been to at a state tournament in at least 10 years. At least.
And I remember sitting there watching that Charleston Mountain Grove game there, and at some point in time during the game, our buddy Dustin Ferguson just looks down at us and says, "This is what it should be like for a state tournament."
Absolutely. I mean, it was such a good atmosphere that one of our other buddies, Jordan Bidwell, got upset and yelled at the referees, and there were so many people in there you couldn't even hear him. And so, it was just a really good atmosphere. So JWT approved Mish's decision to move to state Final Four, even if it's for just a brief period of time. I think it was a good move. Also want to say, along those same lines of thinking, the parking there was terrific. You could literally park across the street if you got there early enough.
Right.
The parking was great. And even, you could even Uber, because you could stay close enough there that you could even, we didn't Uber, but a person could if they wanted to. Just the overall parking, the way the gyms were side by side, I guess you want to say the logistics of everything. Just getting there, getting around was so easy. That was all JWT approved. Absolutely.
And we're gonna pause right there for a second. The logistics of just the general area of the gym and getting around in that particular part of town. We're going to get back to the rest of the logistics of Springfield shortly.
They've got a little work to do between now and next year, but we're going to get to that in just a minute when we go to our other section. One final note that was JWT approved, Airbnb. We'd like to sponsor Airbnb. They don't sponsor us. I want to remind our fans and our listeners out there, nobody sponsors us. We don't make any money off of this show. But we do sponsor Airbnb, and I would strongly recommend, if you're going with a group of people, you Airbnb a place. There are some great. We had an apartment that was just money in the bank.
It was awesome.
It was an awesome place. It was very reasonably priced. We were right there on the square downtown by the Starbucks and all the places. It was just awesome.
We had a kitchen.
Woke
up, we cooked breakfast. It was a great experience. And for those at home, a B&B is not a bed and breakfast.
No, Toby thought Airbnb meant it was some kind of bed and breakfast. It wasn't quite a technical foul on you, but it was something we can make fun of you for.
I get that, yeah.
And so that
but in my defense, B&B, bed and breakfast.
Yeah, it's not. Just stop talking while you still don't have a technical.
Okay, that's a warning.
That's your warning. Get back in your box, Coach. That walks us right into tee 'em up. And this is the section where we call technical fouls on people in real life. And for all
every now and then you deserve one.
Every now and then you deserve one. You've been warned, and it's time to tee you up. The concession stands at the state tournament.
Concession stands, you're out of your box.
Technical foul.
That's a technical foul.
That's a technical foul. And
first of all, can we even say concession stands, plural?
No, I think there's only one. And
I know there was only one at the Hammond Center.
We went over to the Hammond Center, and this is not an exaggeration. We get there right as they're handing out the trophy for whatever the game was before the Class 1 state finals. And they're coming out to warm up for the Class 1 state finals. There's 15 or 20 minutes on the clock. They're coming out to warm up. We are standing in line. Warm-ups are over. They start to play the hype videos, which take 2 or 3 or 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
They sing the national anthem, which takes a couple minutes. They do the starting lineups for both teams, which takes a couple minutes. We still are not through this line. We're in line for, I'm going to say, at least 25 minutes. And
right.
All I ordered was 2 sodas, a popcorn, some Reese's Pieces.
Right.
It's like, I could have went to eat at Red Lobster or TGI Fridays in that amount of time. The line was that, and the thing about it was the line wasn't that long. It's just there was one concession stand open, at least on that half of the building that we could see.
Right.
And so get your concession stand game right between now and next year, because that's definitely a technical foul. And the other area where we got to tee them up, this is a technical foul on the referees and the referee evaluators. And I said this before we ever went to the Final Four. They evaluate the referees at halftime. And you have to adjust half to half, because you can play that first half of the game could be one game. Those referees go in at halftime. They get the feedback from their evaluators. And I've heard this firsthand from referees that have been up there and worked. I don't know if it's still the same way, and I haven't heard anybody say it's not. But I know referees personally who have went in there and been like, David, they're in there ripping us. Like, if you don't call this and if you don't call that, get that coach back in his box. That's not a charge, whatever. And so you come out in the third quarter, it's a completely different game. And in the Class 3 state finals, first half was a good ball game to watch. It's 26-20 at halftime. Honestly, it could have been Charleston was leading, but it could have been 26-20 the other way. Either team, it was just a toss-up game in the first half. DeMarcus Sharp got hot right at the end of the first half, gave Charleston a little lead. It could have easily been the other way. It's just a toss-up game. Both teams playing hard. There's no physical play. There's nothing dirty going on.
And this is not, like one of these Charleston games where they're playing Sykeston or Vashon or something, and it's chippy and physical. And, you think, we got to clean it up a little bit. This is just
two teams playing hard, just a good ball game. And they come out in the third quarter, and in the first 5 minutes of the third quarter, they called 17 fouls, both ways. Now, I want to be clear. In my opinion, it's just one guy's opinion, Charleston did not get cheated. That's not what my...
shot 4 more free throws.
Yeah, I'm not saying Charleston got cheated. I'm saying that the game in the first half, it's like the 3 referees went in at halftime, and they were actually abducted by body snatchers. And 3 different referees came out that looked exactly like them in the second half. It was like a brand new game. And a couple of the fouls were so curious. I remember 2 fouls in particular. And ironically, it was the 4th foul on Madarian Clark, Charleston's best player.
It's the 3rd and 4th.
And, the 3rd one was just an awful charge call. It's just a bad call. But you can understand the call at least. It was they got it wrong, but they called a charge. His 4th foul, they called an offensive foul on him for posting up where nobody knew what was called. Like, what was the call there? Like, there was no action even going on. Like, they called some crazy foul. Well, then they called the next trip. They called the 4th foul on Daniels, the point guard from Hogan Prep, for just a clean steal where Charleston kid basically crossed over, tripped, and fell down. And somebody else was guarding him, not Daniels. It's not like...
and it was about to be a layup.
And Daniels just picked up the ball and took off, and it was like a layup. He's going to score. Oh, that's your 4th foul. Like, that's the way the whole first 4 or 5 minutes of the third quarter was, to the point, you had just people in the bleachers that were not fans of either team. The people that were sitting behind us were commenting on the game, and they were not Charleston fans. They were not Hogan Prep fans. They were just fans sitting at the game. And they could not believe some of the calls that were being made. They were like, what was that? It's just... And I think that's how everybody in the crowd felt. And for me personally, I don't feel like the officials decided the game, like I'm saying, in that they gave Hogan Prep the game instead of Charleston. Because the calls were bad both ways. I just feel like the officials robbed the fans of getting to see which team was really better. Because if they had let them play, maybe Hogan Prep would have beat them by 20. Who knows? What
they done was just completely change the complexity
at halftime. At halftime, and you got a kid like Madarian Clark, who is a great high school player. Charleston with all that tradition. Here's a kid who's going to go down as one of the good players that's ever come out of Charleston. He gets in the second half of the last game of his career, and the kid doesn't even get to play because of just ridiculousness. Calls that. I remember at one point they called a foul under the goal. Hogan Prep made a 3. And while the ball's in the air, they called a foul on a Charleston player for something. But nobody knew what the call was. Nobody knew. And so Coach Farmer they called a timeout or something. And he's on the side going, what did you call? I don't even know what you called. And it was just, to be in the state finals and have this happen. I heard this suggested by a fan, and I've said this before. I wish they would bring crews, a 3-man crew, to work together during the Final Four. I think that would cut down on a little bit of this. Like, bring a Kansas City crew, bring a St. Louis crew, bring a Southeast Missouri crew. Let's get Lee Jones, let's get John Jones, and let's get Tim Harmon, for example.
Yeah, you just got rid of a lot of fouls.
Let's just bring them. Let's bring them up here. And then if Charleston makes it to the state finals, they're not calling that game, obviously, because they can't call the Southeast team. And then vice versa, the Kansas City crew couldn't call it because they've got Hogan Prep, out of Kansas City. So what, we're going to have a Columbia crew call this game, something like that. And so that way, at least it's guys who've worked together before. I think that's number one. That would clean up some of this. And number two, for goodness sake, stop evaluating these officials at halftime, because it is unfair to the kids that are playing this game to have one set of calls the first half and one set of calls the second. I mean, just a completely different ballgame. So to the referees and the referee evaluators, more importantly, because I don't blame the officials. I blame the system. That's a technical foul on the entire system that decides it's a good idea to evaluate referees in the middle of a game.
In the middle of a game.
It's just ridiculous. I mean,
You're teed up, have a seat.
You know, we ask for consistency as coaches. Just tell me how you're going to call it, and we'll figure out how to adjust. When the game changes that much at halftime, it's just impossible for kids to be able to do that. So let's kind of run down some of the basketball that happened. We'll start at Class 3 and work backwards since we just talked about it. Hogan Prep beat Charleston. Congratulations to Hogan Prep. They had a really good team. They were a fun bunch to watch. Don't want to take anything away from them. They had a really good ball team. They had a nice
played real hard.
Guard. They played hard. They sure did. Charleston, I mean, easily could have won that game. They were up 10. There was 2 block charge calls in a row that went against Charleston. At least one of them was pitiful. The other one, you could at least say it's 50-50. Charleston very easily could have.
And both of those, the kid made the shot on, right?
Yeah, they were
I know
both
Clark
and
made it on first one.
Yeah, they were both and one.
Yeah,
and, so
and that's when they were up 10.
Could have pushed it out to 16 or 18 right there, if not for some silliness. So, I mean, Charleston had a great year. They probably beat the best team in the state when they beat Whitfield. I mean, they had a great year, and those seniors have nothing to hang their head about. And Charleston's got a lot of kids coming back. They've got a lot to look forward to. So,
as usual.
And then the Class 3 girls side, I mean, what can you say about Stratford?
Gosh.
I mean, I think they should be, probably like the number 1 seed in the West in the NCAA tournament. I mean,
absolutely.
They've won 82 games in a row, led by the 6'2" junior, the coach's daughter, Haley Frank. She's going to Mizzou.
Commit.
And I mean, she's 6'2". She's got just a beautiful jump shot. Stop on a dime, pull up and hit it. She hit one girl with the behind-the-back move at half court.
At full speed.
Just at full speed. She's so good, and to be that big, and skilled, and they're all skilled. That's the thing. They can all grab it.
They pass it so well to me.
They can take off dribbling. They can pass it ahead. They can all shoot the three. They all cut and move without the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, they never stop attacking you. They average 78 points a game.
And I mean, like all their players, like you said, they can take it off get a rebound and push it ahead. They're dribbling down the court full speed, head up, eyes up, and they're throwing passes on a dime with one hand off the dribble.
That's right. Yeah,
leading to a layup.
They were fun to watch, and California hung in there with them for a little bit. California shot the ball great. They played a great game.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah.
And they were actually in it, down about 10 right before the half, and then Stratford was able to make a little run before the half and get it to about 16 or 18, and then second half they just caved the roof in. I mean, just played phenomenal. So, I mean, they were as good as advertised. They
were so good that Misha makes the programs.
Yeah.
And they put the coach in the program before the Final Four starts with 500 wins. So they come into the Final Four and win 2 games.
He only had 498.
Yeah, that was his 500th win, the state championship.
So they went ahead and put down 500 because they knew they were going to win those 2 games. And so their entire team, except one player, is coming back. They're going to be really good again next year. They've got the coach's daughters, Haley and Kaylee Frank. They're twins. The number 1 and number 2 scorers on the team.
Right.
They're both coming back. The point guard's coming back. The bench is coming back. I mean, they're going to be 82 and counting in a row. How about that? And so going on to Class 2, hey, out of the southeast part of the state, congratulations to Neelyville.
Yeah.
They really made a statement. And I got to give a shout-out to my good friend Blaine Bruce. Blaine tried to tell me Neelyville was going to win a state title.
He called it.
And I did not listen to him. And he actually also called that Whitfield would beat Stratford. And it was a 2-point game at halftime. And I told Blaine, I said, if they pull this off, you are the official prediction person for JWT now. Like, no doubt about it. I mean, because you're the only person that picked this.
He definitely did his homework.
Yes. And, well, he's got a daughter that's a senior who's a really good player at Saxony Lutheran. And he knows a lot about the girls' side because, he's got a kid that plays. And she's a high-level player, so he knows a lot about who's good and who's not. And so But yeah, I tell you what, that Neelyville bunch, they beat Oran pretty handily. Then they handled Skyline, fairly easily, and then kept it right on rolling. So,
yep.
I mean, they're a really good team. Congratulations to them, first state championship in school history.
Yeah, that's what's impressive me. To have such a basketball tradition there, especially on the girls' side. They just got their first one, so
yeah,
congrats to them.
That's a program that's good every year, well coached, well respected, and they finally bring the big trophy home. So congratulations to them. And then switching over to the Class 2 boys, that to me was the most heartbreaking game in the weekend for me, personally. The Charleston loss, it just made me mad because, like I said, I felt like I got to watch a half of basketball and Charleston was out playing them. And then for a half, I just watched the referees. And so I was just mad when I left because, again, maybe Hogan Prep was better. It was a toss-up type of a game, two evenly matched teams. I feel like I just got to watch one half, where with the Hayti game, it was just a classic example of a team in Van Far who never quit. We have to give them credit for coming from behind, but at the same time, it was just a frustrating game watching Hayti, knowing what they're capable of,
right? And
seeing so many unforced turnovers. And I'll give you one play that stands out in my mind, and I actually put this on Twitter, which it was all feeding through the website. Everything was updating live as we were watching the game. And Hayti had probably an 8 or 10 point lead. They're late in the third, early in the fourth quarter, and they got a steal. They had a breakaway layup, and they passed the ball ahead to the guys. Running down the floor wide open, and they didn't just throw the ball. They overthrew it by probably 10 feet. It wasn't even close. So instead of having just a breakaway wide open layup and a little cushion, it was like, once again, they had to play defense for 20, 30, 40 seconds at a time. And then they would run the other way and miss a wide open layup or throw the ball away. And so, when you saw those things, I typed out on Twitter, Hayti needs to slam this door shut before Van Far walks through it. And that's exactly.
I think what they got caught in between doing was trying to slam the door shut and trying to just, finish them and drive that nail through. And then, getting to a point where there's not a lot of time left, trying to play some stall ball. And, you could hear it from their fans and the crowd all saying things like, we don't have to score, let's just slow it down. And they all thought they need to run the clock out, which is probably a smart thing. But at the same time, Coach Bidwell knows his team.
You do have to score. It's just
exactly.
You can't expect that the number you have right now, say you have 56 points or whatever, and you're up 8. With 4 minutes to go, you cannot expect that number is going to hold up. You're going to have to score again.
Right.
Whether it's, hey, they fouled you and you made your free throws or whatever, you're going to have to score. The thing about the game, and my philosophy on the end-of-game situations, is I would always tell you guys, at the end of the game, we want time or we want points.
Yeah.
And if we do it right, we'll get both. In other words, with 4 minutes to go and an 8-point lead or whatever, we want to score, but we want time. So, if they're not pressuring us, we're content to run this clock.
Yep.
What we really want is for them to come out here. And if they come out here and spread the floor forward, that's how you spread the floor, is that you spread the floor with your players, and they're dumb enough to follow you out there 40 feet away. And now at this point, we're going to go around people. We're just going to go. And if the lane collapses, we'll kick it out and just do it again. If the lane doesn't collapse, it's a layup. Now you're shooting layups. And so,
it's layups only.
And at the end of the game, we call it our good shot offense.
Layups and free throws.
All we want is layups and free throws. And if we do it right, and what I mean by that to our listeners who have never heard me talk about this, time and points, because they're the same thing at the end of the game. If I'm up 8 with 3 minutes to go and I score, now I'm up 10. Well, that's going to take you another 15 or 20 seconds to earn those 2 points I just to negate the 2 I just scored. So time at the end of the game, that does equal points, and points do equal time. So if I can get time and points in one possession, if I can run 30 seconds and score, it's game over. And so I think it's what you said. The Hayti kids, they got caught in between trying to run clock and letting people walk out to pressure them. Coach Aaron Bidwell, he called timeout, he substituted, he tried some different things, and I mean, it's just one of those things when you're in that moment. Again, I don't want to cast any blame or anything because that's not what we do here. I want to give credit to Van Farr because it would have been so easy to look up there with 2 minutes to go, you're down 8 or whatever they're down, and say, well, it just wasn't our night. And then also I want to give credit to Hayti because you had to do so many things right to be in that position.
Yeah.
To be up 8 with less than 2 minutes to go in the state finals. Just to get to the Final Four, you had to beat Bernie, who was an excellent team. You had to beat Oran, who's the defending state champs, excellent team. You had to beat Hartville, who's an excellent team, well-coached
Won
team.
the state 2 years ago.
They won the state 2 years ago. I mean, like, just to get here, Hayti had to do so many things right on a day-to-day basis in practice. They had to do so many things right along their way to make it to the Final Four. They did so many things right in their first game up there. They blew Purdy out. And they had done so many things right up to that point in the game. And that's the great thing about basketball, and that's the gut-wrenching awful thing about basketball is
right.
These kind of comebacks, they happen every year. That's why we call it March Madness. You just hope they don't happen to you. So, congratulations to Hayti and Coach Aaron Bidwell for a phenomenal season. And then also congratulations to Van Farr because, that was a great comeback by their kids also. They made shots and they made plays, and, you got to give credit to those kids.
They kept competing.
They did. And so, switching over to Class 1 girls, full disclosure, we didn't go watch that championship game. But I do want to point something out about that. The team that won the Class 1 state championship is a co-op team.
Yeah.
They were 2 schools, for those of our listeners that don't know what that means. There were 2 schools that decided to go together to form one team. And so their enrollment, you have to add your enrollment when you do this. Well, their enrollment was so low when they added them together that they would still only be a Class 1.
And that's pretty impressive. That shows how few kids they have in their school.
Right. Like, I'll give you an example. At Prairie Home, where we're at, we could go together with Bunston or with Jamestown, and we would probably still be Class 1. Us and Jamestown would be close. But, we could probably go together and still be Class 1. And I was actually talking with Dr. Kerwin Erhan, the executive director at Misha. I was talking to him a couple of weeks ago because we're exploring things like this. I think a lot of small schools are. You actually played volleyball against – you had maybe the most wins in school history this year as the volleyball coach at North Pemiscot. Got beat by Gideon and Risco, who co-opted together. So it's like taking 2 schools and joining –
3 of our losses, actually.
Yeah, and joining forces. And, to me, there's something it's just kind of new age. You know what I mean? It's just something that didn't happen. It wasn't a rule. It wasn't a possibility years ago. I just predict that I think more and more at the small school level, you are going to see this happen. Or, like, I'll give you another example. Our school we have such a small enrollment, or there are some schools that have such a small enrollment. What if, like, say, for example, hypothetically, Risco would go in together with Portageville or something like that?
Right.
Like 2 schools that are close, so 1A and 2A, to where we can still be 2A if we do this.
Exactly.
I just think you're going to see more and more examples of this where not only it happens, but to where it happens and the team that's at the Final Four is not one school anymore. It's going to be – you're going to see co-op teams at the Final Four. We just saw a co-op team win the state championship. So – I'll kind of throw that one to you before we go to the boys.
Yeah.
What do you think about
that? It's a little different. Like you said, it's new age. It's something really different, and it's, one, they still had to win the games and do all the work to get there, but at the same time, it's tough to think about. And I can say it just from being on the other side of it where, like, you feel like if you played those 2 schools that co-opt as individual schools, you would have beat either one and maybe been able to go on and win or whatever. Maybe have a championship yourself. But, at the same time, it's kind of fascinating when you talk about a 1A and a 2A combining together and still being
Well,
Class 2
I
or
just think
something like that.
I think it's because another thing, I know at Prairie Home a couple of years ago, we had discussed this, but this is before I came to work there. We had discussed this as a district because not for basketball, but for softball purposes.
Mm-hmm.
We had a girl who was a really good pitcher. She was a junior, and we didn't have enough to play, though. We didn't have enough. We maybe had 6 girls to play or something like that. So we were going to try to go in and co-op with Jamestown, and everybody was on board to do it. The reason it didn't go through is because MSHA used to classify the districts on 2-year cycles.
Right.
So your enrollment was certified, and you're at North Pemiscot. You guys are Class 1, and we're going to put you in the district with Briscoe and Delta C7 and Gideon and Clarkton, etc., and you're going to be in this district for 2 years. So everything was on that 2-year cycle because of the way we gathered the enrollment information. Well, now, because the way we gather the enrollment information is via electronically. Matter of fact, it's being done right now. We're in the middle of a 15-day window to verify enrollment, and now it's going to be done on a yearly basis. So in other words, here's my question, and I guess this is a question maybe for Dr. Erhan at MSHA or whatever, but again, you could almost be strategic with it now. So, let's say we have
what's coming up.
We have a really good group of freshman girls at Prairie Home. They've had a good, crew coming along. Well, what's to stop, somebody from basically? It's like a legal way of recruiting. Like if a 3A school down the road, like Boonville or California, who just went to the state title, called us and said, "Hey, what about going and co-oping next year? We'll take your girls. They can all play JV ball because they're just going to be sophomores. Right. But that 1 or 2 that are really good, they could maybe come play with us and put us over the top, and we could go try to beat Stratford, something like that. I just think that there's something strategic about it, and I'm not saying that we should put a multiplier in place or anything like that. I just think that when the rule was first invented, when they designed this rule, they couldn't foresee this yearly turnover, and the fact that now, we could go co-op with, say, Bunston one year, it doesn't work out. Now Jamestown's got some hot shot 8th grader, 9th grader coming up. We could go co-op with them. I just think that in certain, especially where you're at in Southeast Missouri, where schools are so close together, there's places on the map where it would be very strategic for, say, especially down in the Boot Hill where schools are so small. What we just saw happen with Gideon and Risco in volleyball. Or maybe you guys could go in together with somebody in basketball, whatever. I just think you're going to see these strategic alliances. And so I just found that very interesting that was the team that won the state championship because the winner, and I believe it was Mound City, they've actually won it before. I mean, they're a good program is my point. Maybe they didn't need help,
Right.
But maybe when you added these other girls from, I can't even remember the school right off the top of my head, but when you add them in, maybe that gave them the depth they needed, or maybe that was just one more starter, something like that. I mean, I think it's really.
My thing too. Another thing about it is one. I think, like you said, they couldn't foresee this when they said, "Okay, you can co-op," because it was probably just a few schools that couldn't, put a baseball team out there together.
Exactly.
That takes, we don't have a baseball team at North, the 3rd or 4th year in a row because we don't have enough kids that want to play, but we got 4 or 5 that want to play.
Right.
And it's the same case for Delta C7 right down the road. They don't always have enough to play. They might have 6, 7, or 8. We might have 6, 7, or 8, but if we could combine, we'd have a team. But my deal is man, I think if you're going to combine for baseball, you need to do it for all sports.
Yeah.
Even if your classification numbers are different,
and that's the scary thing about it is
one way is different. And then another thing is it needs to be you and that school are together. Now and later, to where it's this year we combine with Delta. 5 years down the road, can we combine with Risco? Right.
Yeah, and that's the thing is there's no way to make that a rule because every school is its own standalone. I'll give an example again using our kids for example. We've probably got 18 boys that play basketball right now. So for us, any co-op, you have to do it by sport. So you do it by basketball,
Right.
by baseball, whatever. So if you do it by basketball, it's girls and boys, the way that I understand it. And because you couldn't put boys and girls in different districts, you know what I mean? Like you have to be in the same district. So when you co-op, you do it by sport. If I'm understanding it correctly, and like I said, I just called him about this 2 weeks ago because we're looking to do it at the junior high level. But I just think it's interesting where we may not need the numbers for boys, but we may need the numbers for girls. Or like you said, you may need the numbers for baseball, but you may not need the numbers for softball, things like that.
Right. Yeah.
And so, anyway, I don't want to get stuck on that topic. I just thought it was fascinating that a co-op team won the state title, and so
it's something new.
It is something new. And so then switching over to the Class 1 boys, our prediction prior to the bracket was that Eminence would win. That prediction did come true. That was our one prediction that we got right, other than Stratford, which I got right.
You 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Yeah, and so we did get that one right, and that was just a phenomenal game. Two coaches who have both been on this program, Pete McBride at Eminence and Darren Mainders at Walnut Grove. Walnut Grove, first of all, they came up short in this ball game. They finished second in the state. They played in the state finals 3 years in a row.
What a run.
I mean, I'm telling you, there's not very many teams that can say that they've put together that kind of a run. Logan Thomason, the senior, finished as the all-time three-point leader in the history of Missouri, 5th in the nation all-time. I mean, the guy was fun to watch. I got to see him play a couple years in a row.
Those were not easy shots that he makes.
And the thing is, he's not just a shooter. He's a ball handler. He'll go post you up. He can pass.
I love that about his game.
I mean, he does a little bit of everything.
He's smart.
He was fun to watch. And, having said all that, and I said this over and over and over all weekend, and you heard me say this to Coach Mainders when I talked to him, my favorite player on their team was Hunter Gilkey.
Yeah.
I thought Gilkey was their glue. He did a little bit of everything, played really hard. He fouled out there at the end of that ball game in the state finals on Saturday. But he had a great game. Dawson Mainders had a great game. The coach's son who's a junior. They just had a great run. And they were down 17. Eminence was kind of having their way with them. That's a tough matchup for Walnut Grove because Eminence has got two really good inside players in the Dyer kid and then Trent McBride, the coach's son.
Right there.
They're just having their way inside. And man, Walnut Grove, the way they clawed back into that game, they came down from 17 down, came all the way back, tied the score, and then had Logan Thomason take a three that would have gave them the lead.
And that was another thing, too, like we talked about, Van Far coming back, where, we saw kind of two comebacks in the championship game. Hayti let one slip. They had a big lead, and Van Far clawed back and fought and was able to come back and win in overtime. And Charleston, they didn't really lead like Hayti or Eminence ever did, but it felt like they were in control, especially right before all them fouls started happening in the third quarter, and they let it slip away. Eminence was the only team to hold on to it when the other team came fighting back with that.
And they gave up the biggest lead. They gave up a 17-point lead, and that was not
that shows
all.
How dangerous Walnut Grove is.
Exactly. That's not all Eminence playing poorly. It was Eminence just slipping for one little spurt of the game, and Walnut Grove is so dangerous that all they needed was a crack, and they were right back in that ball game. And like I said, came back, tied it, had their best player with an open three to take the lead. He misses the three. Eminence comes down and scores, and then they kind of held on from there, ended up winning the ball game by 7. They finished the year 32-1. They lost their first ball game of the year to Advance, and then they won 32 straight games to win a state championship.
That's a run.
I mean, it's a heck of a run, and they have a lot of juniors on that team, and they have some underclassmen. I know we talked to Coach Dusty Dinkins the other day, and everybody's telling us, hey, watch out for South Iron next year. Their junior high kids are really good that are moving up into high school, and I know they played a lot of freshmen and sophomores this year on the varsity level. So
yeah,
that's a team that's coming, and them and Eminence are always a good, tough ball game. But Eminence has a lot of juniors coming back.
That just won a state championship.
They just won a state championship, so we're not talking about potential here. We're talking about been there, done that now.
Yep.
And so they have a chance to be right back here again next year. I think Trent McBride, for as good a player as he is right now, and let me just say this right now, I enjoy watching that kid pass the ball. He has got phenomenal vision. He sees the floor. He's a 6'6" left-handed post player who can turn around, face up, and shoot it, and he can pass it. And he sees people. He knows where his cutters are at. And then he's a good rebounder. He's a good post player. As good a player as he is today, I'm telling you right now, if he puts in a summer of work, and you know he will, he's going to be even better next year.
Yeah, he's not. He's not at what he's going to be if he does that stuff, because he's got a lot of room to grow in terms of strength and athleticism. And once he does that, he's going to be even better. If he can just get a step quicker, he will tear people up in the post. And that's saying something, because he's already averaging probably like 23 a game.
Yeah, he's a really good player, and I really like the Dyer kid too. First of all, the Dyer kid, great mullet.
Great mullet, and it was maybe the second best mullet in the state tournament and in that game. But it was the mullet that got a ring. It
was the mullet that got the bucket that put him on top for good. And he's a nice player. They had a really good team. I know they're losing a couple of players. They got a couple seniors, but they got a lot coming back, and that's just a heck of a run by that group. Like I said, a guy who was actually the first guest we ever had on our show, and somebody who we've talked to a lot, and somebody we know well, and so we're happy for them. That's a heck of a win. And then for, like I said, Walnut Grove, I mean, they've got nothing to hang their head about. They were a terrific team. That's a great run by that team.
They're fun to watch.
And, I'm telling you right now, that's just a run that you just don't see very many runs like that. And I just hope that, in hindsight, say they had won 3 in a row. That's a group that people would look back on in hindsight and say, wow, that's
one of the best.
One of the great runs we've ever seen. The fact that they got 1 first place and 2 second place finishes, I hope that does not diminish the run.
Right.
That, like when you look back and you say, wow, that's just a heck of a run that those guys had.
And while we're talking about Class 1 teams and great runs over a few years, the only 2 teams to beat Advance that are Class 1 schools are Eminence and Walnut Grove these last 2 years.
Yeah.
Walnut Grove beat them in the championship last year, and Eminence beat them in the sectional this year, and that's the only 2 Class 1 teams Advance has lost to the last couple of years.
Yeah, and so, Advance has had a great run also. So just kind of switching gears here, and tonight's show's not going to be a real long show, but, NCAA tournaments are coming out. I wanted to update everybody. We had a bracket challenge over on the website, and there's an article that's up on the website that had the leaderboard, for the winners on that. So we owe somebody a T-shirt. He won a free T-shirt, and I'll be getting him his gear. But also we're going to have an NCAA tournament challenge where basically if you'll go to the same article, it'll give you the link where you can join our group on ESPN.com.
Download the ESPN Tournament Bracket Challenge app.
Yeah, put the app on your phone, and then you can just join our group. If you go to the ESPN Bracket Challenge, it's just Win Today. That's the name of our group. And we had this group last year, and but like I said, there's an article that's up now. If you want to go on there and click on that and go join our group, again, we will be giving out a couple of prizes to the winners. I'm going and looking at the group right now, and I know the brackets just got released minutes ago, and we've got already about 5 or 6 people that have joined it. And so thanks to everybody that's joined it. It's going to be a lot of fun. NCAA tournament's always fun, and so we don't have time to go through the entire bracket or anything like that.
Right.
We'll do that at some point later this week. The brackets just came out, and I don't want to sound ignorant and just guess based off of records. I got to do my research. But, just early on, give me a couple of teams you think can win the whole thing.
Well, to me, to start, at the beginning of the year, I had Duke and Michigan State. And I tweeted this during the selection show that Duke and Michigan State were my favorites at the beginning of the year, and even during the year when they'd lose a couple and kind of bounce back strong. they can meet each other in the Elite Eight during their bracket. But to me, I think the favorite right now has got to be Virginia. They scare me because they don't score a lot. What's going to happen when they play good defense, but the other team just gets really, really hot? And that's bound to happen. And I think this year there's, like I also tweeted that Virginia is the only lock for a number one seed of all the 4 number one seeds. But most years this team's probably a 3 or 4 of the number one seeds, like the 3rd or 4th best.
Right.
So I think this could be a year of, just wild upsets. We could get to the Final Four and have a couple of 8s, a 5, and a 2. So I don't know if anybody's just going to make a dominant run. North Carolina's playing hot right now, and they've got experience. Luke May and Joel Berry and Theo Pinson could make their third. Well, the last 2 guys, their 3rd Final Four in a row. They've been to back-to-back national championships. Kansas is starting to play strong finally at the right time. Don't count Duke or Michigan State out, but, if you have to pick one favorite right now, it's got to be Virginia.
Yeah, I think they're the best team. They've had the best year. I'll say that.
Right.
They're not
the
best
most
team.
Consistent.
They've had the best year, and I think that, in college basketball today, the lack of star players, because there are no star players in college basketball. The best players are the freshmen, and then they put in their year, and then they go on and play in the NBA. And so basically, when the best players are freshmen, they are very susceptible to playing against these loaded up defenses like Virginia plays. Somebody who's got a real good team concept can slow down a star player. And so that's what Trae Young is finding out as he goes through the second half of his season is, people have made life harder on him. That's just, that's what good team defense does. So, the thing is so wide open now because I think to win the tournament, you really, really have to be able to play multiple styles. And so I think that's why, the same coaches that I think we always see move through this thing, Izzo, Krzyzewski, Bill Self, etc., because their teams can play that good defense, but then they can also get out and score if they need to.
Right.
I would say just looking at the entire bracket, it's so hard to pick, one team. I think a team that's got a chance to make a run is Mizzou. I really do. They
got put in a good spot.
They got the 8 seed, which I wanted to see them. I actually wanted to see them get like a 10 seed because I thought that would put them on the side with the 2.
But they dodged a bullet.
So they're with the 1. They're going to have to play the 9 seed in the first round. They got a game they can win. They play Florida State. They get in the second round. They have to play the number 1 seed, which will be Xavier.
That is better than playing the number 2 seed in that bracket.
It is
North Carolina.
Exactly. So they're going to play Xavier in the second round. If they win their first game, they'll play Xavier. Now let's just say hypothetically. Now Michael Porter's got a week to practice. He's got a week to get in a little bit of game shape. They come out and they lost on a shot at the buzzer the other night. They should win their first game. They should. If they can get in the second round against the number 1 seed, they're going to have the best player on the floor. No.
And I also just saw, because one thing that scares me right now is their depth with Van Leer being out and the news about Jordan Barnett. But I just saw that Conzo Martin does not rule out a second round return for Jordan Barnett.
Wow.
So that will help.
Yeah. And so, losing Barnett is huge. That is a huge blow because this team is already thin. But if they can get out of the first round, they're a team that can make a Sweet 16. They're a team that could pull off, like you're saying, an 8 seed that could beat a 1 seed. And so it could happen. I think that, not to sound cliche or just pick the chalk, but I think North Carolina, they've been to 2 finals in a row. I think Villanova, they've had, a lot of tournament success. Izzo, Krzyzewski, Bill Self.
Especially recently, yeah.
I think you're going to see a lot of these same teams that, and they're going to be upsets like there always are. And so I just think this is definitely the most wide open bracket and just the most wide open season because there's not a great team in college basketball right now. And for as much money as some of these guys are paying for players, you would think that there would be at least one great team, but there's not. And so, but yeah, that's. I mean, I want to get into the bracket and do a little bit more research before I make my picks. But we'll do that. You know, the bracket challenge is up right now. If you go to the article on the website, it's got the link to the bracket on there. Just get on the website, fill out your bracket, and the winner will get a prize. We'll send you some free Just Win Today gear. So we'll figure out a way to get in touch with you and get you your gear. But it was a fun weekend at the Final Four. A lot of good basketball. And then real quick, want to send a shout out to the Sykes and Bulldogs who are going on to the Class 4 state championship.
Yeah.
And, you know, they just had a phenomenal win over St. Mary's. I mean, arguably, some people said the best team in the state. You know, St. Mary's, one of the best teams in the state, if not the best team in the state. You know,
I mean, just St. Mary's, last few weeks, they beat Chaminade by 40 or 50. And then, you know, last week they beat Vashon by double digits. And then Sykes goes and beats them by, was it 17, 18?
They beat them by 26.
20, oh my,
yeah.
Even better.
Yeah, and so, you know, you got, like he's saying, St. Mary's beat Chaminade, who's one of the best Class 5s in the state.
They got a chance to go to the Final Four.
Yeah, blow them out of the gym. And then they turn around and beat Vashon like a drum. And so I think a lot of people, and I'll be honest, myself included, thought Sykes beat Cake by 1. They beat Hillsboro by 1. Both those teams are really good. But, man, this might be the end of the road for Sykes. Probably end of the road. And you know what? No shame in it. I think a lot of people felt that way, even if it was Vashon there. If Vashon got to that game, you know, they've ended Sykes' season the last couple of years. You know, wouldn't have shocked anybody if they beat him again. But, I mean, Sykes they just put on an absolute clinic, run those boys off the floor. We were watching the game online, and the last couple of trips up and down the floor, St. Mary's wasn't even getting back. They had one guy running back. They'd come down and throw the ball away or lose the ball. Sykes to throw it. It looked like a 4-on-1 fast break. St. Mary's wasn't even trying to get back. They just absolutely quit. I mean, there's no other way to say it. They just absolutely quit. And so Sykes can make you look that way. And so we're wishing them good luck as they move forward. And then, you know, some of the other teams in Class 5, you got Webster Groves, you got Rockbridge, all the usual suspects that we talked about back at the beginning of the season. They have advanced. And so that ought to be a fantastic weekend of basketball down in Springfield next weekend.
It'll be a good weekend, another really good weekend, and some high caliber teams and good players up there this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that'll do it for us this week. We'll come back sometime in the middle of this week and talk about our brackets and whatnot. But we did want to just come back and do a recap of everything we saw at the Final Four this weekend. And so, again, great job by Misha. Put on a good tournament down there for all the teams and all the fans. And, you know, so many things they did right with the parking and with the gyms being side by side. And so I really, really enjoyed going down there. I know my kids did too. We had a good time at the games. And so, you know, even got to talk to a lot of our friends and whatnot. So it was a good time.
Yeah, it was fun experience. Misha hit the nail on the head moving it to Springfield, and great atmosphere, great venue, good area of town, and good games. Really, really good games.
Absolutely. And so we'll do this again later this week, Tobe, and everybody out there, thanks for tuning in. JWT.